My name is Amber Reynolds, and I'm 34 years old. I never thought my own sister would betray my daughter on social media. But there it was on my phone, Heather's Instagram poll about my 12-year-old Madison. What's worse, her crooked hair or her nasty attitude? My heart stopped as I stared at the unflattering photo of my baby girl. Years of sibling tension suddenly exploded into something darker, more vicious. This wasn't just crossing a line, it was obliterating it. Before I tell you how this family betrayal unfolded, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family drama that crossed the line, and join me for a story about the moment social media almost destroyed our family. Madison has always been the light of my life. Even before her father and I divorced, she was the glue that held everything together with her creative spirit and determined personality. At 12, she's into everything from soccer to digital art, though lately, she's been struggling with confidence. I've watched her scrutinize herself in the mirror, experimenting with hairstyles and clothes as she navigates the brutal world of middle school social hierarchies. "Mom, is my hair weird?" she asked me one morning before school, trying unsuccessfully to tame her naturally wavy hair that had recently developed a stubborn cowlick. "Your hair is beautiful, just like you," I assured her, though I could tell my words weren't landing. At that awkward preteen stage, everything feels like a catastrophe. Our relationship with my sister Heather has always been complicated. Growing up just 2 years apart, we shared clothes, secrets, and friends, but there was always an undercurrent of competition that intensified as we got older. Heather was the attention seeker, the risk taker, the one who needed all eyes on her. I was the responsible one, the planner, the rule follower. Our parents unintentionally fed into this dynamic. When Heather would act out, they'd give her extra attention, trying to understand her behavior. Meanwhile, I was praised for being the easy one and often left to my own devices. This pattern continued into adulthood, with Heather still somehow managing to become the central character at every family gathering. Amber just got lucky with Madison. I once overheard Heather tell our mother after Madison won a school art competition. "Some kids are just born perfect, I guess." The comment stung, especially since I knew how hard Madison had worked on that project, staying up late for weeks to get it right. Since my divorce from Ryan 2 years ago, family dynamics have shifted even more. I've been raising Madison on my own, working full-time as a graphic designer while juggling all the responsibilities of single parenthood. Ryan moved to Seattle for work and sees Madison during school breaks and summer vacation. He's a good dad but geographically removed from our daily lives. Meanwhile, Heather has been building her identity as a lifestyle influencer on Instagram. What started as casual posting about fashion and local restaurants evolved into a full-time pursuit of internet fame. She now has about 25,000 followers, not huge by influencer standards, but enough to get her free products and occasional sponsored posts. Her content gradually shifted from lifestyle to more personal topics, focusing on authentic living and keeping it real. The tension between Madison and Heather had been building subtly. When Madison was younger, Heather was the fun aunt who brought presents and took her for ice cream. But as Madison entered adolescence, something changed. Heather seemed irritated by her niece's presence, making little comments about her appearance or interests. "You're wearing that to the family barbecue?" Heather asked Madison last summer, eyeing her niece's favorite t-shirt and shorts. "I guess the tomboy phase isn't ending anytime soon." I noticed Madison shrink a little at the comment but didn't confront Heather. Instead, I pulled Madison aside later and told her she looked perfect, that her aunt just had different taste. I was trying to keep the peace, something I've done my entire life when it comes to Heather. Our most recent family gathering was at my parents' house for my dad's birthday. Madison was having an off day. She'd gotten a bad grade on a math test and had argued with her best friend Lauren over something trivial. Her mood was subdued, and she spent most of the party sitting in the corner, scrolling through her phone and avoiding conversation. "What's with the attitude?" Heather had asked loudly across the living room. "Are we boring you, Miss Press?" I intervened quickly. "She's just having a rough day. Let's give her some space." Heather rolled her eyes dramatically. "You baby her too much, Amber. No wonder she acts like this." I noticed my mother nodding slightly in agreement with Heather, which hurt. The rest of the party was tense, with Madison asking to leave early and me trying to balance respecting her feelings while not appearing rude to the rest of the family. On the drive home, Madison was quiet. "I'm sorry about Aunt Heather," I finally said. "She doesn't always think before she speaks." "She doesn't like me," Madison replied simply, staring out the window. She never has. I wanted to disagree, to defend my sister and say it was just her way, but something stopped me. Maybe Madison was right. Maybe there was something deeper going on with Heather that I'd been ignoring for too long in my efforts to maintain family harmony. Well, I like you, I said instead. I like you more than anyone in the whole world. That got a small smile, at least. I made a mental note to talk to Heather privately, to set some boundaries about how she spoke to Madison. But I got busy with work deadlines and Madison's school activities, and that conversation never happened. I realize now that my silence enabled what came next. By trying to keep the peace, I allowed the conflict to fester until it exploded in the worst possible way, publicly, cruelly, and at my daughter's expense. Tuesday mornings are usually rushed in our household. I have a standing team meeting at 9 a.m., and Madison needs to catch the school bus by 7:45. That particular Tuesday seemed no different as I packed Madison's lunch while she finished her breakfast. "Don't forget your science project," I reminded her, sliding her favorite sandwich, turkey with avocado, no crusts, into her lunchbox. "Already in my backpack," she said, giving me a quick smile. Despite the ongoing preteen moodiness, Madison was still my responsible, organized girl. After dropping her at the bus stop, I returned home to prepare for my meeting. I was reviewing design mock-ups when my phone buzzed with a text from my friend Stephanie. "Have you seen Heather's Instagram? Call me ASAP." My stomach immediately tightened. Stephanie wasn't one for drama, so her urgency signaled something serious. I opened Instagram and went straight to Heather's profile. It took a moment to register what I was seeing. There was Madison, captured mid-expression at my dad's birthday party. Her hair was sticking up awkwardly. She'd been wearing a baseball cap earlier that day, and she'd been caught in a moment of frustration, her face scrunched in what looked like a scowl. It wasn't just an unflattering photo, it was deliberately humiliating. Worse was the caption: "My niece serving looks and attitude this weekend." What's worse, the crooked hair or the nasty attitude? Vote below. Heather had created an actual poll where her followers could vote on what was more offensive about my daughter's appearance or behavior. The post already had over 300 votes and dozens of comments, many laughing along with Heather's cruelty. OMG, the hair for sure. Attitude problems start young. I remember when my niece went through her ugly phase, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The room seemed to spin as rage, shock, and horror crashed through me in waves. This wasn't just a thoughtless comment, this was a deliberate public humiliation of a vulnerable 12-year-old girl. My daughter. My baby. I immediately called Heather. No answer. I texted her, "Take down that post about Madison right now." "How could you do this?" 3 minutes later, her response appeared. "It's just a joke, lighten up. This is my authentic content. People love the real us." I stared at the message in disbelief. Authentic content. Realness. This was my daughter's life, not material for Heather's pathetic attempt at internet fame. By meeting forgotten, I called Heather again, straight to voicemail. I left a message that included several words I'd never want Madison to hear. As my initial shock began to transition to action mode, a terrifying thought hit me. What if Madison saw this? She didn't have Instagram, we'd agreed she was too young, but many of her friends did. How long before someone at school showed her? I called the school and asked to speak with Madison, making up an excuse about a forgotten medication. The secretary informed me she was in gym class and would have to call me back. I didn't leave a message, unsure what I'd even say over the phone. While waiting, I returned to the His post to document everything. The poll now showed that 68% of voters thought Madison's attitude was worse than her hair. People I'd never met were judging my child's character based on a single expression captured in a moment of private frustration. Another text came through from Heather: "You're overreacting. It's getting good engagement. I'll take it down tomorrow when I post new content." The casual dismissal of Madison's dignity, treating her humiliation as disposable content with an expiration date, was the final straw. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was who my sister had become. I canceled my meeting, sent a brief email about a family emergency, and grabbed my car keys. This wouldn't be handled by text. Some confrontations need to happen face to face. The 15-minute drive to Heather's apartment felt like. My mind raced through all the things I wanted to say, the accusations I needed to make, the boundaries I should have set years ago. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, and I had to consciously remind myself to breathe. Heather lived in a trendy downtown apartment that she often featured in her Instagram posts. The exposed brick wall in her living room was practically a character in her online persona. I parked haphazardly, not caring if I got a ticket, and practically ran to her building. When she opened the door, she was already filming with her phone. "Look who's here. My sister's having a total meltdown over." I pushed past her into the apartment, cutting off her narration. "Turn that off. Now. My followers love family drama. This is going to be great content," she said, still filming. I reached for her phone and she pulled back, surprised by my aggression. "Whoa, Seko much. Take down that post about Madison," I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. "And don't you dare post this video." Heather finally lowered her phone, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Everyone posts about their family, Amber. It's relatable content. People connect with the real stuff. That real stuff is my daughter. Your niece, a 12-year-old girl who trusts you." I could feel tears of frustration forming but fought them back. "Madison needs to toughen up if she's going to survive middle school," Heather said dismissively. "And honestly, you're not doing her any favors by treating her like she's made of glass. This isn't about parenting styles. This is about you publicly humiliating a child for attention from strangers on the internet." Heather's expression hardened. "Of course you'd see it that way. Perfect Amber with her perfect daughter. Some of us have to work for attention, you know. We don't all have the golden child status you've always had." I stared at her, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You've always been mom and dad's favorite. Why can't you be more like your sister?" "Mer would never do that. My entire life has been a comparison to you. And now with Madison it's the same thing all over again. Look how talented Amber's daughter is. Madison is so well behaved." She mimicked our mother's voice with startling accuracy. "So this is, what, revenge? You're punishing my daughter because you have unresolved issues with me and our parents." Heather crossed her arms defensively. "I'm creating content that resonates with people. Not everyone has picture-perfect families, and my followers appreciate my honesty." Something in her words triggered a horrible suspicion. "What other honest content have you been posting about Madison?" Heather's momentary hesitation told me everything. I grabbed her phone, which was still unlocked, and opened her Instagram profile. She lunged to take it back, but I turned away, scrolling frantically through her feed. There it was, a pattern I'd somehow missed. Over the past few months, Heather had been posting about Madison regularly. Not always as cruel as today's poll, but consistently unflattering and mocking. A video of Madison struggling during a family game night. Caption: "When your niece thinks she knows everything but can't even follow basic rules." A zoomed-in photo of Madison's acne beginning to appear on her forehead. "Puberty is coming for us all." A photo taken from behind of Madison in her swimsuit at our community pool. "My niece thinks she's ready for a two-piece, but someone needs to tell her about those back rolls." Each post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments, many from other adults laughing at my child's expense. I felt physically ill. "You've been doing this for months," I whispered, scrolling further. "How could you? Those posts get triple the engagement of my regular content," Heather said, as if that explained everything. "People love authentic family moments. The brands I work with want to see real engagement, not just pretty pictures. You're exploiting my daughter for likes and free shampoo." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, but the laugh turned into something closer to a sob. "It's not exploitation, it's just sharing my life. Madison is part of my life." "Not anymore," I said, my voice suddenly steady. "Take down every single post about my daughter. Every photo, every video, every mention. Today, or I swear to God." "Heather, you will never see either of us again." Heather's face flushed with anger. "You can't do that. You can't cut me off from my only niece because you're too sensitive to handle social media. Wash me. You're destroying my brand. Do you know how hard I've worked to build this following? These are my best performing posts." The fact that she was still arguing about her brand while I was talking about protecting my child clarified everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't fixable with a simple apology. I still had her phone, and before she could stop me, I went to the most recent post, the poll about Madison, and deleted it. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, grabbing for the phone. I held it away. "What you should have done, Zago. That's theft. I could call the police." "Go ahead, explain to them how you're publicly bullying a minor and I'm the criminal." I deleted 2 more posts before she managed to wrestle the phone from my hands. We stood there, both breathing heavily, a chasm opening between us that felt unbridgeable. My phone rang, interrupting the standoff. It was Madison's school. My stomach dropped as I answered. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Miss Patel from the counseling office. I'm calling about Madison. She's quite upset and has asked to be picked up. Another student showed her something on social media that's distressed her significantly. My worst fear confirm. I'll be right there. I hung up and looked at my sister, who at least had the decency to appear concerned. Madison saw your post. She's at school crying right now. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flash across Heather's face, but it quickly hardened back into defensiveness. Kids need to develop thicker skin for social media. It's part of life now. No, Heather, adults need to be worthy of children's trust. That's what's supposed to be part of life. I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. Delete everything about Madison. Every single post, or our relationship is over. I left without waiting for her response, my only thought getting to my daughter as quickly as possible. The school counselor's office was quiet except for the soft hum of an air purifier. Madison sat hunched in a chair, her face blotchy from crying, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. When she saw me, her expression crumpled. "Mom," was all she managed before fresh tears started. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms, fighting back my own tears. "I'm here, baby, I'm here." Miss Patel, the counselor, gave us a moment before speaking. Madison became upset during lunch period. Apparently, a classmate showed her an Instagram post that featured her photo. I nodded, unable to find words that wouldn't include profanity. "Why don't I give you two some privacy?" Miss Patel suggested, handing me a box of tissues. "Take all the time you need." Once we were alone, Madison pulled back to look at me. "You saw it?" "Yes, honey, I did, and I've already been to see Aunt Heather about taking it down." "Everyone at my table saw it," she whispered. "Kaylee showed it to everyone and they were all laughing." The thought of a group of preteens gathered around a phone, laughing at my daughter's expense, made my blood boil all over again. But Madison didn't need my rage right now. She needed my strength. "I'm so sorry, sweetie." "Why does Aunt Heather hate me?" The question was so raw, so bewildered, it broke my heart. "She doesn't hate you, Chi." I struggled to find an explanation that wouldn't further damage Madison's understanding of family. "She made a terrible choice because she cares more about attention online than people's feelings." Madison wiped her eyes. "It's not just today, Mom. She's always making little comments about how I look or what I'm wearing or how I'm acting." "What kind of comments?" I asked, though I had a sickening feeling I already knew the answer. And then it all came pouring out, months of subtle digs and not-so-subtle criticisms that I'd somehow missed or dismissed. Heather telling Madison her clothes looked boyish. Heather commenting on Madison's weight when she reached for seconds at dinner. Heather jokingly calling her Messy Madison whenever her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Last month at Grandma's, she took pictures of me eating and whispered that she was making a before photo for when I decided to finally get in shape, Madison admitted, fresh tears falling. "That's why I've stopped eating lunch at school. I don't want to get fat." Horror washed over me. My 12-year-old daughter was skipping meals because of my sister's cruelty. How had I missed this? How had I failed to protect her from someone who should have loved her unconditionally? "Madison, look at me," I said firmly. "Your body is perfect exactly as it is. You're growing and changing, and that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing at your age. Aunt Heather's comments say everything about her insecurities and nothing about you." Madison nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. Words alone wouldn't undo months of damage. "I don't want to go back to class," she said quietly. "Everyone will be talking about it." "You don't have to. We're going home, and you don't have to come back until you're ready." Relief flooded her face. "Really? You're not going to make me tough it out?" The fact that she expected to be forced to endure public humiliation broke something in me. Had I been so focused on raising a resilient daughter that I'd taught her to accept mistreatment? "No, Madison. There's a difference between being strong and being forced to take abuse. What Aunt Heather did was wrong, and you don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt." The drive home was mostly silent. Madison stared out the window, occasionally checking her phone and wincing. I wondered what messages she was receiving but didn't want to invade her privacy by asking. That night, after picking at the dinner I'd made, Madison finally spoke about what was really bothering her. "I don't want to go back to school," she said, "ever. I know it feels that way now." "You don't understand," she interrupted, uncharacteristically forceful. "This isn't the first time. Kids have been making fun of my hair for weeks. Lena Garcia started calling me Crooked Crown after gym class when my hair dried funny, and now everyone does it. That's why I asked you if my hair was weird." and now Aunt Heather basically told the whole internet that I look horrible and I'm a brat. I felt like the worst mother in the world. My daughter had been dealing with bullying, and instead of recognizing her cry for help, I'd given her empty reassurances. "Why didn't you tell me about the bullying?" I asked gently. Madison shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "You always tell me to handle my problems, to be independent." Another parenting chose that had backfired. I'd tried so hard to raise a self-sufficient daughter that I'd made her feel she couldn't come to me with her pain. "I'm so sorry, Madison. I want you to be independent, but that doesn't mean you have to handle everything alone. That's what I'm here for, the big stuff, the hard stuff, the stuff that hurts." She nodded but didn't look convinced. "And you don't have to go back to school tomorrow. We can take a few days to figure this out together." That night, Madison had a nightmare. I heard her crying out and rushed to her room to find her tangled in her sheets, tears streaming down her face even in sleep. When I woke her, she clung to me like she hadn't since she was a small child. "I dreamed everyone was taking pictures of me and laughing," she whispered. "Even you." "Never," I promised, stroking her hair. "I will never laugh at your pain." As I held her until she fell back asleep, I made a decision. This wouldn't be smoothed over with polite conversation and family pretense. My sister had inflicted real psychological damage on my daughter, and there would be consequences. My primary job was to protect Madison, and I had failed. I wouldn't fail again. The next morning, I called my parents. This wasn't a conversation I wanted to have, but it was necessary. Madison was still asleep, exhausted from her restless night, and I wanted to address the family situation before she woke up. "Hey sweetie," my mother answered cheerfully. "What's up?" "Have you seen Heather's Instagram lately?" I asked, getting straight to the point. "Oh, I don't really follow all that internet stuff," she said dismissively. "You know your father and I can barely manage Facebook." "Well, you need to know what's happening. Heather has been posting humiliating content about Madison. Yesterday she put up a poll asking people to vote on whether Madison's crooked hair or nasty attitude was worse." There was a long pause. "I'm sure she was just joking around, Amber. You know how girls can be with each other. You and Heather used to compete all the time." I closed my eyes, counting to 5 silently before responding. "This isn't sibling rivalry, Mom. This is a 32-year-old woman publicly humiliating a 12-year-old child for social media engagement. Madison saw it. Her classmates saw it. She's devastated." "Well, I'm sure Heather didn't mean any harm." "I need you to take this seriously," I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. "Can you and Dad come over tonight? We need to talk about this as a family." After some hesitation, they agreed to come at 7:00. My next call was to Heather, who surprisingly answered. "What now?" she asked, her voice guarded. "Mom and Dad are coming over tonight at 7:00. We're going to discuss what happened and what happens next. I expect you to be there." "I have a live stream scheduled." "Cancel it. This is more important." I hung up before she could argue. I spent the day with Madison, who alternated between tearful conversations and long periods of withdrawn silence. She showed me some of the text messages she'd received from classmates, some supportive, but many mocking. The Instagram post might have been deleted, but screenshots lived on in group chats and Snapchat stories. "Will Aunt Heather be at Grandma and Grandpa's tonight?" Madison asked as I made lunch. "They're coming here, and yes, Aunt Heather will be here too. But you don't have to talk to her if you don't want to." Madison considered this. I want to tell her how she made me feel." Pride swelled in my chest at my daughter's courage. "Then that's what you'll do. And I'll be right beside you the whole time." By 7:00, I had prepared the living room with enough seating for everyone and made sure Madison had eaten dinner. When my parents arrived, they hugged Madison extra tight but didn't mention the situation, making awkward small talk instead. Heather arrived last, wearing full makeup and a carefully selected outfit that I recognized from her casual chic posts. She'd brought a small gift bag for Madison, which immediately put me on alert. "What's that?" I asked as she tried to hand it to Madison. "Just a peace offering. The new lip gloss from Glow Cosmetics. They're sponsoring my beauty segment next week." I took the bag and set it aside. "We're not buying Madison's forgiveness with free products you got for promotional purposes." Heather rolled her eyes. "Always so dramatic, Amber." Once everyone was seated, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father cleared his throat. So there seems to be some kind of situation with social media. I pulled out my tablet, where I'd saved screenshots of Heather's posts about Madison over the past few months. Before we talk, I want everyone to see exactly what we're discussing. I passed the tablet to my parents and watched their expressions change as they scrolled through image after image of Heather's content featuring Madison. My mother's hand went to her mouth, and my father's face darkened with each swipe. "Heather Jean," my father finally said, using her middle name as he had when we were children in serious trouble. "What were you thinking?" Heather shifted uncomfortably. "It's just social media, Dad. Everyone posts about their families." "Not like this," my mother said, still staring at the tablet. "These are cruel." "They're authentic," Heather insisted. "My followers appreciate real family content, not some fake perfect image." "Your followers," Madison spoke up, her voice small but steady. "What about me? Did you think about how I would feel when everyone at school saw you making fun of me?" Heather had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Kids are on their phones too much anyway. If you weren't so obsessed with social media." "She doesn't even have Instagram," I interjected. "She found out because her classmates were laughing at her during lunch. She came home from school in tears." "I think what your sister is trying to say," my father said to Heather, "is that your actions had real consequences for Madison. Surely that wasn't your intention." I watched as Heather visibly calculated her response, clearly torn between maintaining her defensive position and appearing remorseful in front of our parent. "Look, I'm sorry if Madison's feelings were hurt. That wasn't my goal. But my account is about authentic family moments, and sometimes authenticity isn't pretty." "Authenticity," I couldn't hold back anymore. "You staged a public poll inviting strangers to vote on what's worst about your niece. That's not authenticity, it's bullying for clicks." "You've always been jealous of my social media success," Heather shot back. "Just because you're stuck in a boring job while I'm building a personal brand." "This isn't about me or your brand," I cut her off. "This is about the fact that Madison has been skipping lunch at school because you told her she needed to lose weight." My mother gasped. "Heather, you didn't." "I didn't say that exactly," Heather protested. "I just mentioned that middle school is when girls often develop eating habits that follow them for life. I was trying to help." "By taking unflattering photos of me eating," Madison's voice cracked. "How is that helping?" The room fell silent. Madison rarely contradicted adults, especially family members. Her willingness to stand up to Heather now demonstrated just how deeply she'd been hurt. "I want you to delete everything about me from your Instagram," Madison continued, gaining confidence. "And I don't want to be in any more of your posts, ever." Heather looked to my parents for support. "This is ridiculous. Am I supposed to pretend I don't have a niece just because she's going through a sensitive phase?" My father, usually the peacemaker, surprised me by firmly saying, "Yes, if that's what Madison wants. She has the right to control her own image, Heather." "So now everyone's ganging up on me," Heather stood, grabbing her purse. "This is exactly why I need my online community. At least they understand me. If you walk out that door without resolving this, I warn, you're choosing Instagram over your family." "Maybe I am," she shot back. "Maybe my followers have been more supportive than my family ever was. Do you know how many messages I get from people saying my content makes them feel less alone in their family struggles? That seeing real family dynamics instead of perfect Christmas card images helps them. And exploiting Madison's insecurities is worth it for those messages?" I asked. "It's not exploitation, it's content creation, it's my career." Madison, who had been quietly watching this exchange, suddenly stood up. "I didn't consent to be your content, Aunt Heather. You never asked me if it was okay to post about me or take unflattering pictures or tell thousands of strangers that I'm ugly and have a bad attitude." The simple truth of a 12-year-old cut through all of Heather's justifications. The room fell silent again. Finally Heather mumbled, "I'm sorry you feel that way, Madison." "That's not an apology," my father pointed out. "That's deflection." "Fine, I'm sorry. Is that what everyone wants to hear?" Heather threw up her hands. "I'm sorry I'm the only one in this family trying to build something of my own instead of following the safe, boring path." And with that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. My parents and I exchanged glances, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. Madison sat back down, looking emotionally drained but somehow relieved. "I'm proud of you," I told her, squeezing her hand. "Standing up for yourself took real courage." My parents stayed for another hour, apologizing repeatedly to Madison and assuring her they would talk to Heather again when she calmed down. After they left, Madison asked if she could sleep in my room. "Just for tonight," she said. "I keep thinking about all those people who voted about me, who are still out there thinking those things about me." "Of course," I said, my heart breaking all over again. Later that night, after Madison had fallen asleep, I checked Heather's Instagram. She had not only failed to delete the posts about Madison as promised but had added a new story, a tearful selfie with the caption, "Toxic family drama. Some people just can't handle the real me. Story time coming tomorrow." She had turned even this into content. And based on the comments flooding in, her followers were eating it up, taking her side without knowing the full story. The divide in our family was now public, permanent, and seemingly unbridgeable. I turned off my phone and curled up next to my sleeping daughter, promising myself that whatever came next, protecting her would remain my priority. The next morning, I called Madison's school and arranged to meet with her counselor. Miss Patel. Madison was hesitant to discuss the situation with anyone else, but I explained that we needed allies who understood what she was going through. "I'm not going back yet," Madison insisted over breakfast. "I can do my assignments online." "Just for a few days," I agreed. "But eventually, you'll need to return. We can't let Aunt Heather's actions control your life forever." Miss Patel was understanding and immediately suggested resources, including a therapist who specialized in adolescent issues and social media trauma. "This type of public humiliation can have lasting effects," she explained gently. "Professional support can help Madison develop coping strategy." I scheduled an appointment for later that week, determined to give Madison every tool possible to recover from this betrayal. Dr. Linden, the therapist, had a bright office with comfortable chairs and walls covered in artwork by former patients. Madison was reluctant at first, answering questions with minimal responses, but gradually opened up when Dr. Linden shared stories of other kids who'd experienced online embarrassment. "What hurts the most?" Dr. Linden asked toward the end of the session. Madison thought for a moment. That it was Aunt Heather. If it was just some kid at school, that would be different. But she's supposed to love me. This simple truth that family should be a source of safety, not humiliation, became the focus of Madison's healing journey. Meanwhile, I consulted with a lawyer friend about possible legal actions. While she confirmed that publicly shaming a minor could potentially justify a cease and desist letter, she warned that legal action might only escalate the situation and draw more attention to the very posts we wanted forgotten. "The internet has a long memory," she explained. "Sometimes the best strategy is to focus on healing rather than fighting." Despite this advice, I did send Heather a formal letter requesting she remove all content featuring Madison and refrain from posting about her in the future. The certified letter was returned unopened. A week after the confrontation, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Amber? It's Lucas." It took me a moment to place the name. Heather's boyfriend of 8 months, a quiet graphic designer who'd always been polite but distant at family gatherings. "I wanted to talk to you about Heather," he said, sounding uncomfortable. "I'm worried about her." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop across town, away from Heather's usual haunts. Lucas looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy as he stirred his coffee. "Heather's obsession with social media is getting worse," he confided. "She checks her engagement stats constantly, sometimes waking up in the middle of the night to see if a post is performing well. When I suggested she apologize to Madison for real, she went ballistic, saying I was choosing her family over her career." "That sounds familiar," I said, remembering her reaction at our confrontation. "The thing is," Lucas continued, lowering his voice, "she's starting to face consequences she didn't expect. 2 brands have pulled sponsorship deals after followers commented about the posts bullying her niece. Her manager is concerned about her family-friendly image being damaged." I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication that there were consequences for Heather's actions, but also sadness that external pressure, not genuine remorse, was what might finally reach her. "What do you want from me, Lucas?" He sighed. "I don't know. I guess I hoped you might have insight into helping her see what she's doing. I love her, but this side of her, the desperate need for validation from strangers, it's changing her." I thought of all the times I'd made excuses for Heather's behavior, all the ways I'd enabled her self-centeredness in the name of family peace. I've spent my whole life trying to understand and accommodate Heather. Right now, my priority is protecting Madison. Lucas nodded. "I get that. I just thought you should know what's happening. And for what it's worth, I think what she did was terrible. Madison seems like a great kid." After Lucas left, I sat thinking about how social media had warped not just my sister's perception of my daughter, but her perception of herself and her relationships. What had started as a fun hobby had become an addiction that was costing her real connections in pursuit of virtual approval. Inspired by what I was learning through Madison's therapy, I started a small support group for parents dealing with family social media issues. Just 4 of us at first, meeting in my living room while our kids played video games in the basement. The stories they shared of relatives posting children's embarrassing moments, of family conflicts weaponized for likes, of boundaries repeatedly violated in the name of creating content, confirmed that this was a widespread problem without easy solutions. Meanwhile, Madison was slowly rebuilding her confidence. Her closest friends had rallied around her, and her art teacher had encouraged her to channel her emotions into a series of powerful self-portraits that explored themes of public versus private identity. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Madison felt ready to return to school. The principal, informed of the situation, had spoken to Madison's class about digital citizenship and online kindness without specifically mentioning Madison's case. "I'm nervous," Madison admitted as I drove her to school. "But Dr. Linden helped me prepare what to say if anyone brings it up." "And what will you say?" "That my aunt made a bad choice to post about me without permission, and that it hurt my feelings, but it doesn't define who I am." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's perfect." Later that day, I received an email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, regarding Heather Reynolds. It was from Heather's talent manager, a woman named Sophie who represented several mid-tier influencers. "I've been made aware of the situation regarding your daughter," the email read. "While I typically don't involve myself in my clients' personal matters, this situation has professional implications. Several brands have expressed concern about working with someone who publicly mocks a child. If there's a way to repair this situation that respects your daughter's dignity while allowing Heather to acknowledge her mistake publicly, I believe it would benefit everyone involved." The email struck me as both calculating and honest, concerned primarily with Heather's career, but acknowledging that what she'd done was wrong. I forwarded it to my lawyer friend without responding. That evening, Madison showed me comments on her private art Instagram account, which I monitored closely. Fellow young artists were praising her recent self-portrait series, with several mentioning they'd dealt with similar family privacy violations. "I think maybe something good is coming from this after all," Madison said quietly. "It helps to know I'm not the only one, and maybe my art can help other kids feel less alone." In that moment, I saw how Madison was transforming her pain into something constructive, while Heather was scrambling to manage the professional fallout of her cruelty. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Public opinion had turned against Heather in a way she hadn't anticipated. While many of her followers initially took her side in the vague, family drama she alluded to, the story had spread to other social media platforms where users connected the dots between her previous posts about Madison and her current claims of being victimized by toxic family. Screenshots of her most egregious posts about Madison began circulating with critical commentary about adult influencers exploiting children for content. Several larger accounts with call-out themes had picked up the story, framing it as an example of the dark side of family content creation. I felt conflicted about this wider attention. On one hand, it validated that what Heather had done was genuinely wrong, not just a case of family oversensitivity as she'd tried to frame it. On the other hand, it meant more people were seeing the humiliating content about Madison, even if in a context critical of Heather. When I mentioned this concern to Madison, her response surprised me. "I don't want Aunt Heather punished," she said thoughtfully. "I just want her to understand how it felt to have someone you trust betray you for attention from strangers." The wisdom in her words reminded me that children often grasp the emotional core of situations more clearly than adults tangled in justifications and ego. As the weeks passed, we established a new normal. Madison continued therapy, her friend group strengthened, and her art flourished. I maintained contact with my parents but kept conversations focused on Madison's well-being rather than Heather's latest dramas. And gradually, I began to understand that while the incident had been painful, it had forced necessary growth and boundary setting that was long overdue in our family system. 3 months after the Instagram poll that had thrown our lives into chaos, Madison and I had established new routines and boundaries. Her weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Linden had evolved from crisis management to building lasting resilience. Our support group for parents dealing with family social media issues had grown to 15 members and moved to the community center. Madison's self-portrait series had been selected for the school's art showcase, a significant honor for a 7th grader. She stood proudly next to her work at the opening, confidently explaining her artistic choices to visitors. I used fragmented mirrors in this one to show how social media breaks up our real selves into pieces for others to judge, she told my parents, who had come to support her. My mother wiped away tears. "You're so insightful, Madison. We're so proud of you." They had been making concerted efforts to rebuild their relationship with Madison, careful to respect her boundaries and affirm her feelings. They still saw Heather, but had established firm rules about not discussing Madison with her and vice versa. The night after the art showcase, I received an unexpected text from Heather, "Can we talk, in person, just us?" My immediate instinct was to refuse, to protect the fragile peace we'd established. But after consulting with my support group and Madison's therapist, I agreed to meet Heather at a neutral location, a quiet cafe across town. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth without her usual perfectly staged latte and pastry arrangement that would typically appear on her Instagram. In fact, I noticed her phone was nowhere in sight. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. Her usual confident demeanor was subdued, her makeup minimal. "What do you want to talk about, Heather?" I kept my tone neutral, protective barriers firmly in place. She took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy, twice a week for the past month." This was perhaps the last thing I expected to hear. "Oh. Lucas gave me an ultimatum after everything. Either I get help from my social media obsession or he was leaving." At first I was furious, but then I lost 2 more brand deals, and my manager suggested a social media consultant who specializes in reputation rehabilitation. I couldn't help but notice how even her path to therapy had been driven by external consequences rather than genuine remorse. "I'm glad you're getting help, but if this is about salvaging your influencer career." "It started that way," she interrupted, "but it's become something else. My therapist helped me see patterns I've been blind to. How I've been searching for validation my whole life, first from mom and dad, then from friends, boyfriends, and now from strangers on the internet." She paused. "And how I've been jealous of you since we were kids." Jealous of me? This seemed absurd. Heather had always been the center of attention, the risk taker, the one with the exciting life. "You've always known who you are, Amber. You never needed anyone's approval. And then you had Madison, and you two have this amazing bond her voice cracked, that I've never experienced with anyone. I think I've been punishing both of you for that." For the first time, I glimpsed the wounded person beneath my sister's carefully curated exterior. "That doesn't excuse what you did to Madison." "I know. Nothing excuses it. What I did was cruel and selfish and abusive," she whispered the last word. "I've deleted all the posts about Madison, every single one, and I've posted a public apology without using her name or image." I had seen the apology post. It had seemed genuine but vague enough that it could have been about anything. I hadn't been impressed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Heather continued. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused Madison. If there's ever anything I can do to make amends, I'm willing to try." I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar: vulnerability. "Madison is the one you hurt most," I finally said. "Any amends would need to start with her on her terms if and when she's ready." Heather nodded. "I understand. I'll respect whatever boundaries she needs. And no posting about it. No using this as content. No public family reconciliation narrative. I promise, I'm actually taking a break from posting personal content altogether. My therapist suggested it, and Lucas is helping me stick to it." We talked for another hour, cautiously rebuilding a fragment of trust. When I got home, I told Madison about the meeting, careful not to pressure her either way regarding contact with Heather. "I think I'd like to talk to her eventually," Madison said after considering it. "But I have conditions." Over the next week, Madison worked with Dr. Linden to develop clear boundaries for potentially rebuilding a relationship with her aunt. Her list was simple but powerful. 1. No photos of Madison on social media without explicit permission for each specific image. 2. No discussing Madison's appearance, ever. 3. A real apology that acknowledged the specific harm done. 4. Regular check-ins about how their relationship was feeling for Madison. 2 weeks later, we met Heather at a park. Madison had chosen the location because it was open and public but still allowed for private conversation. Heather arrived without her phone visible, something Madison immediately noticed and appreciated. The initial conversation was awkward, with long pauses and careful word choices. "I prepared something I want to say," Heather finally said, pulling a handwritten letter from her purse. "Is it okay if I read it?" Madison nodded. "Madison, I betrayed your trust in the worst way possible. I took moments when you were vulnerable and used them to get attention from strangers on the internet. I made cruel comments about your appearance during a time when you were already feeling insecure. I violated your privacy and dignity for likes and comments. There is no excuse for what I did. It was selfish, mean, and harmful. I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused you, for the anxiety and embarrassment you experienced because of my actions. I promise to respect your boundaries moving forward and to earn back your trust slowly, if you're willing to give me that chance. If not, I understand and will respect your decision." Madison listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. When Heather finished, Madison asked, "Did your therapist help you write that?" Heather looked surprised, then smiled slightly. "She helped me understand what a real apology needed to include, but the words are mine." "I accept your apology," Madison said formally. "But I'm still hurt, and it's going to take time for me to trust you again." "I understand. Thank you for even being willing to talk to me." As they continued talking, I watched my daughter articulate her boundaries with a confidence that amazed me. The pain of Heather's betrayal had forced Madison to develop self-advocacy skills beyond her years. Over the following months, Madison and Heather rebuilt their relationship slowly, with careful attention to the boundaries Madison had established. Heather's social media presence changed dramatically: less personal content, more focus on her professional design work, and strict privacy settings for family-related posts. Madison, meanwhile, channeled her experience into meaningful action. With support from her art teacher and school counselor, she started an anti-cyberbullying club at school that focused specifically on family privacy issues. The club created guidelines for students about consent before posting family members online and strategies for talking to parents and relatives about social media boundaries. When Madison was invited to give a presentation to the Parent-Teacher Association about the club's work, she spoke with remarkable poise about her own experience. "When someone you trust betrays you online, it hurts differently than when a stranger or classmate does it," she explained to the roomful of adults. "It makes you question all your relationships. But it also taught me that I have the right to control my own image and story, even within my family." Several parents approached her afterward, thanking her for helping them understand their children's perspective better. One mother tearfully admitted she'd never considered asking her children's permission before posting about them. The most meaningful change, though, was in the relationship between Madison and me. The crisis had forced us to communicate more openly about difficult feelings, to acknowledge the complexities of family dynamics, and to prioritize our bond above social appearances. "You know what's weird, Mom?" Madison said one evening as we walked our recently adopted rescue dog around the neighborhood. "If that awful Instagram poll had never happened, I might never have started therapy or my art series or the anti-bullying club." "That's true," I agreed. "You've created something meaningful from a painful experience. And I don't think Aunt Heather would have gotten help either. She seems happier now, less desperate for attention all the time." I marveled at my daughter's capacity for perspective. At 13, she understood something many adults never grasp: that sometimes our deepest wounds become the source of our greatest growth. "I'm so proud of you, Madison," I said, squeezing her hand. "You've shown more wisdom and compassion through all of this than most grown-ups I know." She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes in a way I hadn't seen in the early days after the incident. "I learned it from you, Mom. You protected me without turning me into a victim. You let me feel my feelings but didn't let them define me." As we turned toward home, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. An Instagram poll designed to humiliate had instead become a catalyst for healing generations of family dysfunction. Madison was developing a strong sense of self that wasn't dependent on others' approval. Heather was confronting her need for external validation. Parents were learning to support both their daughters without enabling harmful behavior. And I had finally broken my lifelong pattern of maintaining family peace at all costs. Sometimes, I realized, the most loving action is drawing a firm boundary, even when it creates temporary discomfort. That night, Madison helped another student from her club who was dealing with a cousin posting embarrassing childhood photos. I overheard her gentle guidance. Your feelings matter. Your privacy matters. And real family supports your dignity, not uses it for likes. In that moment, I knew we would be okay. The social media betrayal that had once seemed like it might destroy our family had instead forced us to build something stronger, healthier, and more authentic than the surface harmony we'd maintained before. Have you ever experienced family conflicts that played out on social media? How did you handle the situation, and what boundaries did you establish afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more about navigating family relationships in the digital age. Thank you for listening, and remember that true family loyalty means protection, not exploitation. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that message today.